Hi, Lynn. Thanks for joining me for a view into the origins of the Idaho Center for Fiscal Policy. Now, at the time the center was an idea around 2009, you were serving as executive director of the Idaho Nonprofit Center, a position you held from about 2007 to 2013. And in that role, you served as a convener for the early conversations around the center. First of all, I want to let you know how grateful we are for the ways that you've supported and shaped the concept from the beginning. Um, and for the benefit of everybody listening today, I also want to ask a few questions about how the center came together. Um, so in your role as director of the Nonprofit Center, you must have been familiar with lots of mission-based initiatives. What made the concept for the Idaho Center for Fiscal Policy stand out to you?
Well, thank you, Alejandra. And first of all, congratulations on your 10th anniversary. I am so excited that this organization has been so successful and so influential over these years. When we started gathering in 2009, it really was a gathering of nonprofit leaders who were frustrated that we couldn't influence some of the foundational tax and other policies that we felt were affecting the economic success of all Idahoans. It was a huge issue. And so we started talking about what was needed and how we might go about setting up something like this here. And in our conversation, we talked a lot about the realities of Idaho and, the fact that we needed to make sure that this was based here in Idaho, that we were working with local people, that we really were focused on high integrity data and analysis. And so that started a really interesting about 8 months process where we created a steering committee to start with. That steering committee then we created a set of community engagement and with public speakers that we brought from national organizations to really start exploring this idea with nonprofit leaders, what a fiscal analysis center might look like and what value it might bring to their work specifically. We went back to Northwest Area Foundation and said, we think we want to start a fiscal analysis organization. But to do that, we really need to go out and talk now to other people than nonprofits. We have a need, but now we have to see, would the people who would use this data, will they be receptive to this? And then ultimately, will funders fund this? And so they gave us a second grant, and we hired a contractor, Taryn McGreeny, and she and I actually, but mostly she, went all over the state. We talked to current legislators, former legislators, lobbyists, all kinds of people throughout the state, and basically asked the question, if we had this kind of data, would it be useful? How would we present it to you so that it could be actionable? A whole set of things. And I was really pleased to find at the end of all of that we got a very positive response back from legislators and others.
Thank you, Lynn. It's very fitting that the process was very data driven and that lots of folks were consulted and very true to that still the mission of the Center for Fiscal Policy, which is really to lead with credible facts and to make sure that analysis is on solid ground. And so I guess what I want to turn to next is really asking you about what were some of the key attributes or ingredients that you felt that a fiscal policy center in Idaho would, or the people you consulted with felt really strongly about. Would it have to be structured a certain way? Would it have to be led by a certain individual in the beginning? Tell us a little bit about what was needed from day one.
One of the things, so when we decided to move forward and approached Northwest Area Foundation actually for the third time, and this would be for the grant to actually start the center, we at that time determined that we would model ourselves on the State Fiscal Analysis Initiative that was being led by the Center for Budget and Policy Priorities back in Washington, D.C. We would not be an organization that could be successfully funded if it didn't have some sort of a fiscal sponsor. And so as we looked at this, and the steering committee and I went through a careful, thoughtful process to think about who would be the appropriate fiscal sponsor for an organization like this. And we really came down to two. We came down to the nonprofit center. However, we were small, we were a pretty small organization at that time. And, we had all of the right, I would say, the policy chops, but we didn't have the right infrastructure, grant writers and some other things. And so the other organization we looked to was Mountain States Group. And it had all of the infrastructure and everything else. But at that time, the board and the organization was very reluctant. In fact, they had a policy that said that you couldn't lobby. And so they asked us at the time, is this organization going to lobby? And I said, well, yes, in some fashion, it probably will lobby.
Thank you. That's fascinating, and definitely, I think over the years, Mountain States Group, now known as Janus, and the Idaho Center for Fiscal Policy, have even have deepened the both the infrastructure and then the policies that support the work that we're able to do at the State House as well. And so it was a very good match in the end. And I'm glad
Yes.
that you and the organizers had the wisdom to see that could come together in that way. So thank you. And yes, and I would agree that the infrastructure here includes the ability to, ask local communities and civically minded folks, if they were willing to also support the center through gifts, if they felt, that the mission was a good one and that we were doing good work in Idaho, which was also a very strategic choice. So Lynn, earlier with our team, you shared that the work that you did to set up the Idaho Center for Fiscal Policy was really what you consider to be, one of your your finest accomplishments as the director of the Idaho Nonprofit Center. And my question really is just tell us more about that and why you feel that way.
I look at what the organization started and then has become as truly being able to influence some things that make a difference in everybody's life in Idaho. And I think it has stayed so true to its roots of being nonpartisan, of being factual, of being data driven, all of those good things that we hoped it would be, but really shining a light on some issues that just have not been, highlighted in the past. It's not something that our part-time legislature, has a lot of information about. And I think it's so important to be able to deliver credible data so that they can look at policies in a broader light.
So my last question for you, Lynn, really is what would you like to, do you have any tips for us about the next 10 years or any wishes for us going forward?
I think, there's been a lot of turmoil in the state legislature this year, but other years as well. There's always a difficult balance to be able to look at business interests, to look at small government, to look at big government, to look at, all these different policies. And I think it's important for the center to continue to push to have really the focus of the legislature be, how do we improve the lives of Idahoans? How do we improve the economic life, but the personal life, the quality of life in Idaho in the greatest way possible? And I think the center can continue to push on those kinds of issues that really broadens the perspective of the legislature so that we are taking a wide view and not just some narrow interests of certain sectors, but really fundamentally, how is it that Idaho can be a great state for all Idahoans? And I think you're doing a great job, and I think you can continue to do that work.
Thank you, Lynn. And I'm right there with you. And every day, at the center, we do think about, what are the priorities of our communities as a whole and how can we get there? It's certainly a really important question today and will be going forward. So Lynn, I really truly enjoyed the time we got to visit today and for me to learn more about the origins of the center. I want to thank you once again for the work you did to get us started. And as a person who, works both in the public sector and the private sector and different sectors, you're a person with a lot of insight into, what works in the state. And so thank you so much for your time and for your best wishes, and take care.
Yeah, thank you, Alejandra, and thank you for all the work that you and the center is continuing to do. It's terrific to have you in this leadership position, and congratulations on your 10-year anniversary.